Okay, we got it done. It took a team, but we got it done. And so I backed up a slide just again because it creates a flow. If you know, at the night, yes, you're going to see this soft reflective light from the moon, but you're also going to be much more aware of fragrances and of sounds. And for some of us, I have friends who truly believe that there are magical creatures, there are fairies living in their gardens at night. They even see little glimpses of them, and that's wonderful. So moon gardens aren't just beautiful, they are also medically and psychologically therapeutic. That slowing down, calming your brain, your blood drops, your pulse rate diminishes, and you release more serotonin, which is your body's own feel-good drug. And so it actually accomplishes good things for you to take these moments for contemplation, and then hopefully it helps you also have a better night's sleep. So moon gardens are created with a mix of reflective flowers, foliage, and objects. Oh, and most of these photographs are from my garden. In fact, these are my Queen Anne's lace, which are not a weed at my house. So they talk about white being a color, but as a scientist, white is not a color. White is actually the absence of all color, and it is the most reflective and therefore the most dramatic in a moon garden because it makes maximum use of those moonbeams. For literally centuries, gardens were created without white flowers. There was people are always making up rules. It's one of the things humans like to do is make up rules. There are those of us who like breaking those rules, but yeah. But you did not build a garden with white flowers. They were felt to be too disruptive, too strident, that they didn't play well with other flowers and foliage. And so really, it was kind of like, I mean, it was in writing, a rule that you did not use white flowers. So this was the first garden with white flowers. In 1938, Vita Sackville West. And I'm going to take just a moment to step back because I am like totally in love with the Victorian lady gardeners. We owe a lot to them. We still do a lot with garden design from these lovely ladies, from the mid-1800s to the mid-1900s, and it wasn't proper for women to wear pants. So they were out in their gardens in long wool skirts and wool jackets, sensible shoes, and their pearls. So one of my favorites is Gertrude Jekyll. Anyone familiar with Oh, good, good. So she was actually an artist before she became a garden designer. And she designed over 400 gardens in Britain for castles and mansions, rich people. And of those 400 gardens, only 40 survive. And this is an issue just really very real to me, is gardens rarely survive the death of their owner. Even gardens built by or for rich people. Fortunately, you can visit the 40 that are in trust, and this one, Sissingham Castle, Vita Sackville West Garden, is also preserved. It's in a trust, and so you can go visit it. And sort of by definition, a white garden by day is a moon garden by night. But Vita Sackville West was brilliant. She was famous as a poet. She also could play on either team. So she was famous also as Virginia Woolf's lover, in addition to being married. She wrote volumes of books. She wrote for several decades a weekly gardening column in the local newspaper, but she never had any classes. She was entirely self-taught. So she wasn't breaking rules, she was creating rules. And she was the first garden designer who came up with the concept of garden rooms. Thank goodness, because my garden would be a hot mess if it were not divided into 23 gardening rooms. Um, she also was the first gardener to develop monochromatic gardens. So the blue garden, the pink garden, and here the white garden. And I just think it's really instructive as gardeners to know a little bit about gardening history and connect with some of those people who are no longer with us, but they have left their legacy. They're very inspirational to me. So yes, the white garden is a moon garden, but a moon garden can be so much more because it isn't just the whites, it's also the pastels. And so the pale pinks, the pale yellows, the pale blues, these all are very reflective colors. And so they pick up the moonlight. Fortunately for me, chartreuse also picks up and reflects. If you look at the artist's color wheel, chartreuse is the opposite. We call them the complement of plum. And so people talk about my garden, my signature color being purple. Really, it's plum because I like the warmer shades of purple, not the more blue shades of purple. So there is a lot of chartreuse in my garden. So during the day, the chartreuse stands out, but you also see the plum and the purple. At night, the plum and the purple turns to black and the chartreuse glows. I'm also especially fond of grass flowers for a moon garden. They have a special shimmer. And of course, if there's a breeze, there's also that rustling. It contributes to the sound of your garden. So here, the miscanthus, the pennisetum, and the panicum, they're blooming right now and will be even more glorious as the next 2 months go by. And then they persist through the winter so that you have things glowing in your garden, in your moon garden, even through the winter. And so that combination of snow with these plants that also are luminous means that your moon garden is not just spring, summer, fall. It is year round. Size does matter. If you have just little sprinkles of white or pastel flowers, the moonlight is so dim and diffused that you really don't see much. But as well, this is no secret. I really am not fond of subtlety. So, yeah, so I don't like little sprinkles anyway. I mean, my flowers and my foliage plants are all in these massive sweeps. My garden style is called the English estate style. And so for me, just for aesthetics, I want all of my white and light flowers to be in big blocks of color. But I also need that for the butterflies because butterflies are like Mr. Magoo without his glasses. Butterflies are very nearsighted. And if you just have little sprinkles, they fly by and don't even see them. Combination of aesthetics and function. Shrubs are especially nice for a moon garden. Not just because of they often have beautiful colors, pale colored flowers and sometimes variegated foliage, but also their size. For many of us, part of a moon garden is that it feels like a hug. Instead of being exposed to the universe with here's the sky above you, many people like their moon garden to be more enclosed, more protected. And this is built into our human DNA, that we feel safer when we feel protected, like a canopy of trees, a porch roof, a pergola, something overhead protecting us. And so those of you who have clethra, not only is it beautiful and either white or pink, it is also profoundly fragrant. The oak leaf hydrangea, a native, we like that. I have to put in a word for, this is the new hot hydrangea. Hydrangea arborescens is a native, but this is a naturally occurring variety. Hydrangea arborescens has halo. Naturally occurring variety. So in my garden, by definition, it is a native. I know not everyone agrees with that, but in my garden, this is a native. I only have 10 of them because they are so extraordinary. They have been anointed by the Mount Cuba Center as the best landscape hydrangea to balance the needs of humans, which is beauty, with pollinators, which is nectar and pollen. the best balance. Those lace caps are 12 to 14 inches across, and they bloom for a good 2 months. But when they first go into bloom and they're fertile, bumblebees think it's crack. Every single one of those lace heads will have a circle of bumblebees around the outside. Very popular. And they sucker, so you can keep dividing them and giving them to friends. And then I also wanted to show, yes, I'm showing off, but this is my Kohlwitzia, the beauty berry. I have two of them, and they're side by side, and they're 15 feet tall. And so one year, about, oh, what would it be? About 10 years ago, I decided to do a resurrection pruning. And so I did cut them to the ground. You know, I am a whacker. I cut things to the ground. I don't even leave 2-inch stumps. We are talking to the ground. And within 2 years, it was 15 feet again. So telling me this is how I want to be. And the pollinators are very happy about that because they bloom for a good 6 weeks and are just covered with bees. So we looked at flowers, both the herbaceous and the shrubs, but foliage also can be a major part of your moon garden. And what I like to say is, you know, flowers are ephemeral. Foliage is forever. And so you get this long, you know, you've planted something, you get a lot for your effort when it's foliage because you don't have to wait for that, you know, 1 or 2 weeks for perennials. Fortunately for annuals, which is what I primarily use, you've got a good 6 weeks to 6 months of color, but still the foliage is there for you. And this Artemisia Powys Castle, how many of you grow Artemisia Powys Castle? I only got 1, 2. Oh, this is my official favorite plant in the universe and has been for, gosh, 30 years. It's true, it is a sterile hybrid. It has no flowers, so the pollinators do not share my joy. But it is this, and it's a short-lived perennial, so I'm going to need to replace them in 2 to 5 years. It is worth it because this shimmering silver brings life to everything. You know, I like to put colors like bright red and bright orange right smack dab together. But then if I have an Artemisia Powys Castle nearby, kind of brings some calm and some reason to the space. And of course, in a moon garden, it just shimmers with that very fine cut foliage. It also smells like Absorbine Junior, which I love that smell. I am not a subtle person. And then, of course, I have the Japanese painted fern in several places in my shade gardens. I also have the Broelia, the Jack Frost, which also is a variegated silver plant, very long-lived. Mine, gosh, like 35 years old. And see, you all know, those of you who know me, you know I hate to plant. I despise planting. I love digging in the dirt. I just don't want to put a plant in there. And so I look for plants that either live forever or take responsibility for their own procreation and plant themselves. And I never transplant plants. If they're looking poorly, I'm just going to let them die because then I'm going to have some new real estate to put a new plant in because it's a 44-year-old garden and something's got to die to have room for something new. And then, of course, lamb's ear. And there's now the lamb's ears hybrids that do not bloom. In my garden, a lot of my foliage plants, and they do have flowers, you know, most flowering plants have flowers, but I don't let them bloom because as soon as they start blooming, the foliage is not as beautiful. And lamb's ear is definitely one, but someone help me with the name. Is Helen Von something? Yes, yes. That doesn't bloom, but I once did have some revert, and I just, you know, the minute I see a seed stalk or a flower stalk, off it comes. And then variegated foliage. This is my Euonymus gaiety and my Hosta patriot. And all over my garden, I have one garden. Well, originally it's where I had my bird bath, and birds would be flying over. And so all the foliage was splashed with white. And I said, I'm just going to join the party. So that's where I have a whole bunch of different variegated plants that are themselves white and green. And so it's sort of the theme. bird turds is the theme of this gardening room. Mhm. Okay, so we've talked a bit about the visual and about it being a reflective, diffuse light, and what flowers and foliage, some ideas. Any questions or thoughts before we move to fragrance? Yes, ma'am.
Just want to add hostas, like the Patriot, there's lots and lots of the white and green.
Yes.
Variegated. But I also have discovered that sun power is incredible in the moonlight.
Oh, yes, it would
Again, the
be.
chartreuse.
Yes.
It's so large and it's at
Mhm,
base and it's just extraordinary.
Yes, thank you for mentioning that. And I have them. I just,
Substance.
yes.
The other chartreuses, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, as you all know, you're experienced gardeners. The challenge in gardening is choosing from all of the available selections. That is not easy. It usually takes me 2 or 3 years to decide on the purchase of a new plant because I got to read, I got to study. It's kind of like, choosing a spouse and you want to know all about their family and their habits. It's not something to be done in a random manner. And I know so many people, their idea of planning their garden is what they're going to wear when they go to the nursery. But my garden is on graph paper and nothing comes home with me unless there is an X marking the spot on that graph paper. But that frees me up to then accept all the serendipity created by Mother Nature so that I don't have to, so I've got the bones of the garden set and then can embrace everything that Mother Nature decides, because a plant that has chosen its own spot, in my experience, is going to be so much happier and healthier than a plant that this mere human, even if you read and study, but plants don't read the book, and they do have the ultimate truth. And so if they have chosen a spot that's not in a path, they get to stay. So fragrance. Now, it isn't just your imagination that you smell more flowers at night. First of all, during the day, the sun is beating down, and a lot of industrial chemicals are what we call volatile. That means that when they get hot, they turn to a gaseous form, and those molecules are floating in the air. So like asphalt and creosote and car emissions, all of those odors are in the air and you're smelling them during the day. During the night, the sun is not volatilizing them, and so they're laying down. So the air really does smell better at night. Plus, the air at night tends to be more humid, and those water molecules in the air carry the scents better. But it's also true there are quite a few plants that only have fragrance at night. Even if they bloom during the day, they do not release their fragrance until the night. Now, we divide fragrance in plants as horticultural scents and landscape scents. And so horticultural scents, like you got your nose pretty close to it and took a sniff and it smelled wonderful. And that's true for a lot of our fragrant flowers. But the ones that really have the power, the ones that are really special, are the landscape scents. And so how many of you have the Korean viburnum? So oh my gosh. Yeah, it's a very spicy, deep, I wouldn't call it floral. It's much heavier than that. And so mine is planted quite a ways away from the house. But when it goes into bloom, I open the front door. I can smell it all the way across the driveway, all the way across 3 flower beds. It is just absolutely glorious. Another one that I've used is the Picardi petunia, but I am in near suicidal anguish because it is an heirloom petunia, and the last 2 years, neither Flower Farm or Vinland were able to get the seeds to grow it for me. And so it's becoming hard to find, and yet it has a perfume beyond not just other petunias, and some other petunias are also wonderfully fragrant, but it is superior among flowers. But I do have the native fragrant currant. Who has smelled that? Yes. So see how Sharon's smiling? Yes. I have it planted near my basement door and I can smell it all the way over to my prairie. It just wraps itself around the entire garden. This, again, this wonderful deep clove smell. And the same with some of the dianthus, and they may not carry as far. I don't know of any plant that carries as far as the fragrant kern. But still, that very heavy, dense smell. We're going to spend a little time talking about Datura because I'm totally in love with Datura. It is a member of the tomato family. It is not a moonflower. I tend to get a little unhinged when people call it a moonflower because moonflowers are Ipomea, the morning glories, same as incidentally sweet potatoes are morning glories. So this glorious plant, the Datura anoxia, is not native to Kansas. It's native to to the American Southwest, Mexico, Central America, but we do have a native Datura. Yes, I'm looking to see, do any of my native plant lovers, and I'm going to call it an infamous, not a famous Datura. Did I hear it? No, that's a morning glory. No, Jimson weed is a Datura. It's Datura stramonium. And so all the things you know about Jimson weed, well, I guess because I'm a farmer, Jimson weed probably is closer in my heart because it is toxic and hallucinogenic. And if you have teenagers, you have to kind of watch them if you know you have Jimson weed out in your field. But you could consider Datura anoxia as the ornamental Jimson weed. And it's in the tomato family, and so it grows a lot like a tomato, that kind of sprawling vine. It does self-seed. It is a perennial, and it's just glorious. Now, its common name that I know is angel's trumpet. It's related to Brugmansia, and they're called the devil's trumpet because their trumpet points down to, where the devil hangs out. And these are the angel's trumpets because they point up. And so every morning you will see these beautiful 10-inch long buds. And then you will know that evening you will have all of these 10-inch long flowers. And they don't open until the sun is setting. They're still light. Of course, the butterflies have already gone to bed and most of the bees, but usually as they start to open, they're releasing this fragrance that smells like lavender should smell. I mean, it's like really deep and floral. And so all the honeybees gather at the top of the mouth, longingly looking down there, but it's 10 inches and they're scared. But the bumblebees, they've got the power. And the bumblebees dive right down to the bottom where the nectar is and then power back up. And so you're watching all this and all of a sudden something brushes your ear. The hummingbird moths. They are the pollinator. This is a 10-inch long flower. Hummingbird moths have 10-inch long tongues. This is not a coincidence. So I consider this a plant, if you have the space, and also a little bit of courage, because it does self-seed like crazy, and you have to remove the seed pods, or you will have nothing but Datura in your universe. But to me, it's worth it. But between the look and the smell and the fact that it's a perennial and self-seeds, I mean, I love this plant. Okay, so I've mentioned a couple times it's in the tomato family. So that means it is a host plant. I love when plants are, I call them the twofers. They're both a nectar plant and a host plant for the Lepidoptera. I'm going to wait and let you look at this. So, why are so many night blooming flowers so fragrant? Actually, I could enlarge that question. Why are any flowers fragrant? Why would a flower spend the time, effort, and resources to produce perfume? Yes, attract the pollinators. Pollinators don't know that they're the love connection for flowers. So flowers have the responsibility of attracting them with fragrance and color, and then keeping them coming back by bribing them with nectar. So the primary nocturnal pollinators are moths. And moths are actually, even we have flower moths that pollinate during the day. And they're actually far more effective than butterflies at pollinating because they have furry bodies and the pollen sticks to their bodies. You know, butterflies are more like sleek supermodels. And the moths are like more stubby little Russian ladies with babushkas and furry bodies, you know. And so, and many of the moths are not afraid of people, and so you can get very close and admire them. And before the insect apocalypse hit, I used to do a lot of mothing and mothing parties, setting up my mercury vapor light and bringing the moths in for people to see. I've stopped doing it because nobody comes anymore. I mean, it's just very distressing. Also, June bugs, they aren't nectaring. They're actually looking for love, and they do eat pollen. And because there are so many of them and they're large and they bumble around on the flowers, they do act as pollinators. But again, it's really moths that are getting the job done. So here's the hummingbird moths. We have, and that is the seed pot of Datura anoxia. It looks like a medieval torture device, you know, like you literally could not pick that up without gloves on. They are very, very spiky. So we have two species of hummingbird moths because we have two species of their caterpillars, two different species. Who knows? Who are the children?
Tomato hornworm
And tobacco hornworms.
and tobacco.
Yes. In fact, here in the Midwest, you all call them tomato hornworms, but we nerds, you know, we Lepidoptera nerds, we know that they're really tobacco hornworms. And to me, they look very different, but you know, I'm a nerd, so they would. But both of them, they are the size of hummingbirds. They are fearless, and they are the pollinators that we look for. And they will even come up and drink out of your wine glass. But just amazing. So there's the datura, and there is the moonflower. It is a tropical morning glory. So if you start it in the dirt in your garden, they won't even germinate until it gets like 80 degrees. So they usually don't even start blooming until like late August or September. And they're about a third the size of the moonflower. They're much smaller. And they're also very delicate. Like if I go up and sneeze, they'll collapse. And so they don't have nearly as much nectar and I would call it sustaining power to have these huge pollinators land on them and search out the nectar. But, you know, I mentioned Datura has the fragrance only as it's opening. The moonflower does have the fragrance all night long. And if you are going to have them, I suggest definitely having them somewhere where you're either coming in and out of a door or you're sitting in a chair at night so that you can smell it's sort of like a gardenia jasmine type aroma. Really, really lovely. They are not a host plant to our tomato and tobacco hornworm. I mean, they're a morning glory. They can do nothing as a host plant for our beloved hummingbird moths, but they are very beautiful. So I also have to mention Nicotiana. These are also in the tomato family. They are also a host plant for the tomato and tobacco hornworm. The sad thing, well, I'm such a snob. If you buy the Nicotiana alata, which is the smaller one, at a nursery, you're likely going to get a dwarf down stupid hybrid that, not that I have opinions, that is sterile, it doesn't self-seed, and it doesn't have fragrance. So I might as well go to Hobby Lobby and buy a plastic plant. They're useless. So I have the species and I've had them for like 35 years. And they self-sow. And if we have a gentle winter, they are a perennial in our area. They're zone 7. So sometimes they make it in our zone 6 winters. The fragrance is astonishing. They don't have a fragrance during the day, but at night, again, they can perfume your entire yard. And then I also have the Nicotiana sylvestris, whose common name is only the lonely. I wish I knew the history of that because I think that's quite charming. But it is over 6 feet tall, and those flowers are 6-inch long tubes. And obviously, it takes a hummingbird moth with a 10-inch long tongue to pollinate them. And this is the only plant I've ever found tomato hornworms on. All of the others have been tobacco hornworms. Now, I love them both, so that's not a problem. And I see lots of adult tomato horn or tomato hummingbird moths. So I don't know what they're eating, but there are a lot of native members of the tomato family, or we would not have native hummingbird moths. I mean, every butterfly, every moth you see, there is a native host plant, or they would not be native to Kansas. So, and I've even seen tobacco hornworms eating the Carolina prickly plant, Carolina nettles, is the common name I know it by. It's very, 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 very spiky, very, very, and they're just working their way around the spikes, happily eating away, don't get pricked. So, and of course they'll eat nightshade. I found them on nightshade. So, so highly recommend the Nicotiana for your moon garden for the fragrance as well as the beauty, and of course to have more hummingbird moths. So that was fragrance. Anything anyone wants to share or add? Ready to move on for sound? Yes?
You're probably familiar with one of the most recent rages of the bioluminescent.
Yeah, I'm not a fan.
They're not very strong.
No. And that's like Frankenflowers. It's just a little too far from Mother Nature's intentions for my personal taste. I think they're fun, but if you like them in your garden, absolutely have them. Yeah, I've only seen photographs. I've never seen them in person. So in person, I might like go crazy. Uh-huh. Yeah. All right. So are the leaves bioluminescent or only the flowers?
It is a really neat, cool thing to look at.
Oh, I'm sure. Yeah.
As you say, and I don't necessarily disagree, because it's not a natural plant.
Mm-hmm.
I know a man that worked on the project,
Mm-hmm.
but because it's not, I'm kind of the same way as you,
Mm-hmm.
but I do like the effect.
Absolutely.
I have them on my deck.
Yeah.
Really nice to have.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I'm a scientist, so I love new science. But when plants evolve in nature, there's this constant, plants want better pollinators, and pollinators want better nectar and pollen. And so together, they're constantly improving. That's why this idea that the original native species is best is not necessarily true. In fact, we're doing research. We have data. I love data. We have data now that some of these new varieties are like 5 to 7 times more attractive to pollinators than the original species. But it's because the pollinator and the plant worked it out together to make it a win-win for each other, rather than sticking with the old stuff. Plus the USDA, and they say 1492, Columbus sailed the ocean blue, and if you weren't here as a native then, you're not a native. We've had another 500 years of evolution. I'm sorry. Does the USDA not believe in evolution? And my father worked for the USDA for 30 years, so, I feel I'm entitled to trash them when they deserve it. Okay, the night is full of sound. Now, I moved to a farm in Kansas from downtown Detroit City. Yeah. So to me, night sounds were not a good thing. Sound of sirens and gunshots, it really was. And so one of the first things when we bought our farm, there was already a pack of coyotes living there. Very wonderful and exciting. And I'm sure at 44 years, so it can't be the same animals, but the pack still lives over near the southeast corner of my lake. And they sing a lot in spring. And then now is, I think, the most fun because the cubs are learning to howl. And you know how teenage boys' voices sort of crack and break. Well, so do coyote cubs. Voices crack. You know, they aren't as long lasting and as smooth. But the song they are singing is not a song of aggression or celebrating kills. Their song is "We Are Family." This is a song to bond the tribe. And so I think it should be respected and appreciated. Much of the sounds you hear at night are from amphibians, our frogs and our toads. And toads breed in the spring. And if you pick up a male toad, okay, you're going to know I'm a pervert when I tell you this. And when you pick up a male toad and lay him on his back and pet his tummy, he will sing like a canary. I mean, a song with melodies. But they don't sing for very long. But like I have lots of eastern gray tree frogs. They're chameleons. They're both green and gray, back and forth. Scientists don't know when and why they change their colors. But they sing for months and a loud trill. In spring, we also have our western chorus frogs. They sound like running your fingernail over a comb. Just lots and lots of amphibian songs. And they're all about love. You know, it's all about attracting a mate. Yeah, why would you not appreciate love songs? I can't believe it when people complain about frogs singing. It's not that loud, to me at least. Okay, insects. The main insects who sing are members of the cricket family. And so crickets, katydids, and grasshoppers. And they're really kind of like violinists because they rub their legs over their wings and produce those sounds. And again, they're love songs. Now, I don't like crickets in my basement, but other than that, I love the sound of crickets and katydids. I hate grasshoppers, but I like their song, you know. So so again, I'm very glad to know that they're all happy and they're looking for love and their life is being fulfilled. Now, just in case you didn't know, cicadas do not sing at night. Cicadas sing during the day. And I find them quite amazing because they do synchronized singing. You know, there'll be hundreds of individuals singing away, top of their, well, they don't have lungs, and they stop immediately, all together. How did they know? The only time I've seen better synchronized singing is, you know, the Korean K-pop boy groups. They are really good. But when you hear singing at night, it's probably either frogs or crickets, katydids, and grasshoppers. There are some birds who sing at night. Ever since I've lived in Kansas, my neighbor has had barred owls living in their barn. I'm sure that 44 years, must be different couples. But the male and the female do a duet to each other, a love duet. They're like Nelson Eddy and Jeanette MacDonald singing these songs. They sing in the afternoon, late afternoon, and then at night. And to me, it sounds kind of like the pneumatic lifters of a car in a garage. That sound that when they're lifting. Kevin, you probably know what they call those things. Hydraulic, there we go, hydraulic lifts. But, you know, when it's coming from a bird, it can be kind of romantic. The champions, for me at least, are the mockingbirds. Mockingbirds are my official favorite bird because they sing. And scientists have done considerable research and they have discovered that the more songs a male mockingbird knows, because it is the males who sing, the more songs he knows, the more successful he is with the ladies. Yes. And so if you hear a bird singing and it's quite melodious and you're like, ooh, and if they stick with that song, that's the bird. But if it keeps changing into different melodies, then it's probably a mockingbird. So mockingbirds at my house, at least, they sing all day, and then they seem to take a snooze in the evening. And about midnight, I'll start hearing them again until like 5 in the morning. And again, these are love songs, and they're beautiful. I'm happy. I used to hear whippoorwills. I used to hear quail. I used to hear meadowlarks. I don't know. Does anybody still hear whippoorwills? I mean, you do? Do you live out in the country? Wonderful. Oh, wonderful. See, when you're wiping out all the insects on our planet, the next step is you're wiping out all the birds. And we're already seeing both happen. So it's even more reason to appreciate and try to help what we have left. So here comes whole section, artificial lighting. It is a way of really ramping up your moon garden, increasing the intentionality, increasing the function. But you're not going to go out there and stick a great big old electric light bulb out there. I mean, that's, it's like a lot of farms have the yard light. It's a mercury vapor light it's like daylight out there. No, no, no. We're not trying to mimic the sun. We're trying to keep it like the moon. And so the light should be very diffuse and count on reflective power. And it also needs to be either itself limited or on a timer. Electric lights will need to be on a timer. Why?
Because the birds are trying, or the bugs and birds are trying to communicate. And lightning bugs,
Yeah.
lightning bugs are trying to find their mates.
Yeah. For insects, especially, many of them do conduct their love life at night, and they need darkness. But as a gardener, you're even more upset about people leaving their lights on all night. So what do plants do during the day? They use the sun, they photosynthesize, they make sugars, starches, fats. At night, when it gets dark, they send all of those manufactured products down to their roots, where they can be either stored or sent back up to the leaves. If you leave those lights on all night, your plants get constipated. They cannot ship their manufactured goods down to their roots. So you're seriously interfering with plant metabolism. And so that's something to keep in mind when you're making your selections, because you actually have three different, at least from my experience, three different kinds of lighting. The low voltage electric, which uses almost no electricity. You're not going to be adding to your electric bill. Or solar, or candles. And we're going to talk about all three. How am I doing for time, Sharon? Okay. Might have to speed it up. I try not to, but it's hard not to run over. Anyway, so the number one use in my mind for artificial lighting is to ensure safety. I mean, we humans do not belong there in the pitch dark out in our gardens stumbling around. And so to have paths and then to light them. And there are just so many options in price, in style, in size, and ease of installing. And I really think first, if you haven't yet done this, instead of going to a big box store and standing and staring at the shelves, I think first, Google artificial lighting, and you could add something like in Kansas or like path, or get it a little more specific, because there's so much information and you want to have time to look through it and think about it and read it and then compare it to what your goals are and what you need, because gosh, it's like there's almost too many choices. So safety, number one. Number two, of course, is ambiance. And so you see on the table there, I have candles in glass containers. And that is the only way I would use candles in a garden. We live in Kansas. You may have noticed it's windy. It's just too easy, even if it's a heavy glass container, for a candle to get blown over. And so I burn my prairie every 3 years. I know what a fire racing through my property looks like. And even though I do it on purpose with lots of other folks, it's terrifying. I am not about to leave a candle unattended in the dark. Now, they're wonderful. I do dinner parties and wine tastings, and I set up the tables not in my garden, but on the driveway. I'm really pretty paranoid about this. And then as soon as we're all going in, we blow those candles out. And that's the only way I would recommend using candles. But the overhead lights, one is electric and the other is solar, both work. And again, there's just so many choices, and it's a matter of you doing a little research, plus having a pretty clear idea in your mind of what your needs are, your goals are, so that you can get the right match. I probably could buy a really fancy sports car for all the money I have spent on garden lighting. Because I started trying to do lighting like 35 years ago, before the solar was very good. And I've had it professionally installed, and then I've had kids, and now it's also easy. So again, you don't want to spend a whole lot of money on something that isn't going to meet your needs. 3 of my 6 water features are water gardens built by swans. And for them, they use the low voltage electric and carefully place the spotlight so that it catches the movement of the water for the waterfalls. Lovely. So you get that combination of the sound and then also the visual of seeing the moving water. I also have a lot of uplighting, like that's my redbud tree. Anything that looks very architectural, both winter and summer, has a really nice shape and a really good trunk that you want people to see and admire. And so I started with the low voltage electric, but now solar lights come in a strong enough spotlight that you can use them, and they will stay on all night if that's what you wish. Although I certainly have everything programmed or selected so that it's going to turn off about midnight. So another thing I use, because I have absolutely no pride, I'll do anything for effect, is I use Christmas tree lights, outdoor Christmas tree lights. The ones I have, I use the blue light ones. The blue that you see are my bottles. I have 6 bottle trees. You know, I warned you I'm not subtle. So I have 6 bottle trees, blue bottles in my garden with white Christmas lights, and I've had them together running every single day, 365, all year round, for over 10 years, and they haven't quit on me yet. So that's another really good option. And there you've got all the choices you want for color. You can get the blue like I like, it's white blue, or the warm white, which is more yellowish, or all the colors that Christmas tree lights come in, and even blinking ones and ones that change color, whatever works for you and your goals in your garden. So here's my favorite, and I even brought one for you to see. This little feller. Yes. All the money I've spent. I probably have 30 or 40 of these because it's a 2-acre garden and a lot of paths, and I like a lot of light. I refer to my gardens as Las Vegas in Kansas. When the sun goes down, it's a completely different experience. And so I have these little guys everywhere except where I need uplighting, like a spotlight look. These are the little guys I use. They come in packs of 4. I order them on Amazon. And, when you're reading the description, the batteries last like, gosh, they say 5 to 10 years. I'd say probably 7 or 8 years. And quite honestly, I don't replace the batteries because by the time the batteries have run down like, 8 or 10 years, the solar light panel has also gotten really scuffed up. And so I do try to, walk around with a damp rag and wipe my solar panels off. But they eventually start to, they're not able to take in as much sunlight to then charge the battery. Oh, and you see my little note there, very important. Solar lights do not emit UV light. UV light is what attracts insects. And so you don't have to worry about solar lights attracting insects. And they also don't give off heat. So you certainly don't have to worry about them starting a fire next to your ornamental grasses. To me, they seem pretty darn near perfect. Except that you gotta be able to charge them. But they come in all different types, as spotlights, motion detectors, very diffuse light, very pinpoint light. And so it's again, that's why I suggest doing research online before you go into a store. Plus, a store won't have nearly as many selections. But here's our drawback is you must have direct sunlight. And that means no morning sun. Morning sun is not direct sunlight. It means full afternoon sun. You can get by with 6 hours. You won't get the same performance, but really 8 to 10 hours. And the solar lights really will last all night if you've bought one of the really expensive ones. Again, you get what you pay for, but you can leave them out in the winter. I do. I leave all of my solar lights out in the winter, and sometimes I've brush snow off those solar panels, but they charge right up. It might take a little bit longer. You also can buy solar lights that have an extension cord. And I just want to give you a word of warning. If you Google solar extension cords, that's a completely different product. It's meant for people who have solar panels in the roof of their house. Yeah. So I haven't seen, but maybe I haven't had to look, anything other than buying a solar light that here's the light and it's, looks like a light. And then here's this long extension cord and here's the battery and they're an attached unit. And so you can put the battery in full sun and it's a very skinny little wire. So you can hide it under your mulch or under plants. And so you can have your light source in the shade where you need it. So solar colors, I happen to prefer the cool, bright white, which is sort of bluish. I do have some that's the yellow, and just because, I think it's because so much of my lighting is bluish, the yellow just doesn't look right to me. I did buy purple ones, purple solar lights, but I didn't care for them. And I'm not sure why. I rarely ever think something's tacky. Because I have very little class, but they just weren't right. So I gave them to a friend. Again, so many choices. So if you're going to have a spot where you're going to go out into your garden to enjoy the moon garden, that is what we call our sanctuary. Quite honestly, safest is for you to keep your butt on the porch or the deck, still in the civilized world, but and one of my sanctuaries is on my back porch, but the one near my front porch, and this is it, it's about 12 feet, but it's all paved, no obstacles, and I make sure I probably have an adult beverage with me, and so it's going to be in a plastic cup always, and just again thinking of safety as you go. It depends on what you like in terms of the mood. If you want a feeling of coziness and protection and sanctuary, you want it to be in a place where you've got trees overhead for a canopy and you've got big bushes and maybe big furniture, not exposed. But I have a third sanctuary in my prairie. I keep a path mode to the Prairie Spirit Circle, and I have an orange chaise lounge out there. And I can go out there. I grab one of these little guys to use as my flashlight and go out there. And in my, I'm down near the ground in my chaise lounge and I'm looking up at the big blue stem and the sunflowers. And I can really pretend that I am in the middle of millions of acres of prairie. So many choices for you. So you have lots of seating. To me, this is too much light. I want to have more of a feel of the moon and the reflectiveness, but it's whatever meets your needs. And because you'll probably be sitting down, it's a nice place to use containers. And the containers, then you have a lot of flexibility with the choice of your flowers, your foliage, and also fragrance. And you can be switching them out. Okay, everybody worries about mosquitoes. In fact, I think when Larry introduced me, somebody was back there muttering mosquitoes. Well, first of all, speaking as an amateur entomologist, most mosquitoes do not fly at night. Most mosquitoes fly during the day. Bats are not out there eating mosquitoes. That's what purple martins do. Bats eat moths. So there's very little use for a bug zapper for mosquitoes. Um, there are a few species that are what we call vesperine, which means twilight, but as soon as it gets dark, they go to bed and sleep underneath leaves. So you see my study that I put up there. In 15 days, they had a bug zapper up, and it killed about 14,000 insects. And so, you know, this is why we have grad students at our universities, went through looking at all of these dead bodies, and only 31 of those insects were even biting insects. And all of these innocent lives, and most of them pollinators. And it did nothing. So, well, first of all, I don't have mosquitoes, or very few, because I do not use insecticides. I have not used insecticides in 35 years. That means I have not killed off the good bugs. The number one predator of insects are other insects. And so these are your employees. These are your team. You don't want to be killing them off with insecticides. And I especially, because I have a lake and 6 water features and a farm pond, I have dragonflies, huge swarms of dragonflies. We call them mosquito hawks where I was raised in North Carolina. And I'm also very careful about standing water under containers especially. And so I do use the mosquito dunks, which are BT, Bacillus thuringiae, but a strain that is selected for mosquito larvae. Highly recommend. They're not toxic. In fact, for some reason, my cat really likes to drink out of my papyrus bowl. And of course, there's a great big old fat mosquito dunk floating right there in the middle, and he just laps water around it. The other thing that is effective, of course, are some of the herbal insect repellents. Highly recommend them. And see, I am of French heritage, which means I stink. I mean, that's just the way we French are. This is a bisonet nose, bisonet armpits. What can I say? So mosquitoes leave me alone. But for, but for people who are high carbon dioxide excretors, that's how blood-sucking ticks and mosquitoes and flies find their prey, is by how much carbon dioxide you're producing. So you really might want to put on lotions and look to find the one that works for you. But why murder all of the insects in your ecosystem when all you have to do is just roll on or slather on a lotion? Just makes a lot more sense.
Lenora, I would add to that a fan.
Oh, really?
They're not really good flyers.
You know, you're right. You're right. See, I usually have a breeze coming off my lake, but I think that's a great idea. A battery operated fan. We got it. Absolutely. I'm going to add that to my presentation. That's a great idea. We've already talked about light pollution and its impact on our insects. These are Polyphemus moths. I have lots of them because I leave the leaves in the fall. That's their cocoon. They wrap it in a leaf, and then it falls onto the ground with the rest of the fallen leaves. And if you clean up the leaves in your garden, you have just wiped off these moths that are bigger than your hand, but you have killed them. And another solution, of course, is masking the ambient sounds, probably especially here in the city, with. Can I keep talking?
Yep.
Okay. I particularly like running water. And so all 3 of my sanctuaries, I also have a big flower pot like this with no hole, full of water, and a pump running, so that there's the constant sound of running water. And so that is a really nice natural sound in the background. For those of you who love music, especially nice music, see, I still listen to heavy metal acid rock. So I don't think that belongs in my moon garden, but But for those of you who like nice soft music, that also would be very nice as a backdrop. I've got wind chimes because, you know, I read about them, but the only wind chimes I like are the really big, deep ones. And it takes it takes a Kansas wind to get them going. So, but every garden is different. So what if you don't have enough moon glow? Well, obviously, artificial light is your first, to me, your first go-to solution. You know, figure out where you could create more reflective patterns by then also having more light and white flowers and foliage and furniture and hardscaping, and then use the electric artificial lights or the solar lights to like bring it up a notch. And also, of course, I'm always a big fan of garden art. So, but in my garden, you got to be sprayed purple or you're not art. So that doesn't work for me. So here we are at the end, another shot of my beloved datura. So hopefully this has given you some ideas. Again, I suspect all of you already have the start of a moon garden. And so to think about your lifestyle and how much time you want to spend outdoors in the evening and what you can do to enhance that experience for yourself. So, any questions? We done?
You give tours, that's there?
Pardon?
If we want to go out and see the park, we call.
Yeah. Yeah, the Douglas County Master Gardeners have come out several times. Like Nikki called me back in August, and we were waiting for this experience to see how many people would be interested. The problem is the season is coming to a close. I have 3 tours this next week because people want to get it done before the frost hits. But yeah, that's what I do. To me, there's no point in having a garden like mine if you're not using it to educate people. My mission in life is to get people to be nicer to insects. And so you need to come out to my garden and see the interaction of the insects and what it adds to the garden and learn their life stories. That is really what I'm all about. But a short answer is yes. No. It's not a public garden. I only do tours to groups like this. Thank you. Thank you.